The day I buried my husband, I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. Before the flowers had even begun to wilt, my mother-in-law leaned close and calmly informed me that the home we had built together would soon belong to her. I was still holding the folded American flag from my husband's funeral, yet she was already planning my future without me. My name is Naomi Carter, and I was married to retired Army Colonel Grant Carter for more than 20 years. Grant believed in discipline, honesty, and taking care of people before taking care of money. He built a respected manufacturing company after leaving the military, and together we built a quiet life in Northern Virginia. I believed grief would be my greatest battle after losing him, but I soon realized his own family had become my biggest challenge. The funeral at Arlington National Cemetery was beautiful and heartbreaking. Soldiers honored Grant with perfect respect, and when they placed the folded flag in my hands, I felt as though they were trusting me with the last piece of him. As I stood beside the hearse, my mother-in-law, Vivian, quietly told me that the house and the company belonged to her family now because Grant should have protected his bloodline. I looked at her in disbelief, then calmly answered that today was not the day for that conversation. That evening, our home felt painfully empty. His reading glasses rested beside his favorite chair, and his unfinished crossword still waited on the kitchen table. My attorney, Warren Blake, arrived carrying several legal folders. Before he even sat down, he explained that Vivian had already contacted lawyers to challenge the estate. He expected me to prepare for a long legal fight, but instead, I surprised him by saying I would not fight her the way she expected. He looked completely confused. He reminded me that I had every legal reason to defend everything Grant had worked for. I simply told him that my husband never reacted emotionally when people underestimated him. He always prepared first and acted later. After Warren left, I finally allowed myself to cry. I stood alone in Grant's closet, holding one of his old army jackets, until my cubs could no longer support me. Over the following days, neighbors offered sympathy while rumors spread through town faster than autumn leaves. Some people believed I had already surrendered. Others claimed I was too heartbroken to defend myself. Even Grant's oldest military friend asked why I seemed so calm. I quietly answered that Grant would not have rushed into a battle. He would have made sure every detail was already in place before anyone realized what he was doing. The gossip only grew louder when Vivian started acting like the victory already belonged to her. Family members repeated her version of events, insisting that I was finally stepping aside. She even visited the company and introduced herself as the future owner before a single court decision had been made. Watching loyal employees worry about losing their jobs hurt me far more than anything she said about me. One afternoon, I visited the factory where Grant and I had worked side by side for years. The familiar smell of machinery and coffee instantly brought back memories of better days. The production manager, Douglas, quietly admitted everyone was worried. They wanted to know whether their jobs would survive if Vivian took control. Looking into their anxious faces reminded me that this company had never been just a business. It supported families who had trusted my husband for decades. When I returned home, another surprise was waiting across the street. Vivian stood outside my property with a real estate agent and two contractors. They measured the yard, pointed toward my porch, and discussed remodeling plans as though I had already disappeared. My neighbor hurried over, expecting me to explode with anger. Instead, I simply watched through the kitchen window. I was furious, but I also knew anger was exactly what Vivian hoped to see. Each evening, I escaped into Grant's workshop behind the house. Rather than sitting alone with my grief, I organized years of carefully labeled binders, notebooks, maintenance records, and business files. Grant had always believed that every important document deserved its proper place. As I sorted through shelves filled with his handwriting, I felt closer to him than I had since the funeral. One night, while opening an old binder, a sealed envelope slipped onto the floor. Across the front was my name written in Grant's unmistakable handwriting. My hands immediately began to shake. Every part of me wanted to open it, but something inside told me to wait until morning. I placed it back inside the binder and carried everything into the house, knowing some moments deserved a clear mind. The following day, I finally opened the envelope. The letter sounded exactly like my husband. He joked that if I was reading it, his mother was probably already making my life difficult. Despite my tears, I found myself laughing because it felt like he was sitting across the table teasing me one last time. Then his message became serious. He reminded me that every military mission required careful preparation, and he had treated our future exactly the same way. Near the end of the letter, one sentence stopped me cold. He instructed me to ask Warren about a blue estate binder instead of the green one I had already found. I rushed back into the workshop and searched every shelf until I spotted a dusty blue binder hidden beneath several boxes. Inside were trust papers, legal records, and years of carefully organized documents that I had never seen before. I immediately called Warren, asking him to come over without delay. He spent several long minutes reading every page while I sat silently across the table. His expression slowly shifted from curiosity to complete disbelief. Finally, he looked at me and quietly explained that Grant had done something remarkable years earlier. According to these records, both our home and the company might no longer belong to the probate estate at all. For the first time since my husband's funeral, I felt something I had almost forgotten. It was not revenge, and it certainly was not celebration. It was hope. Grant had always believed that the best defense was careful preparation, and it suddenly seemed possible that he had protected not only me, but every employee who depended on the company. The final court hearing was only days away, and no one, especially Vivian, had any idea what was waiting inside that courtroom. The morning of the hearing arrived with a cold breeze that matched the knot in my stomach. I barely touched breakfast before driving to the Fairfax courthouse with Warren. The hallway outside the courtroom was packed with neighbors, former soldiers who had served beside Grant, and several employees from our company. Everyone expected a bitter fight. Only Warren and I knew there was a chance the truth would change everything. Vivian walked into the courtroom wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile that suggested she had already won. She even wished me luck in a tone that sounded more like pity than kindness. I simply nodded and took my seat. Months of grief had taught me that silence often carries more strength than arguments, and I refused to give her the confrontation she seemed to crave. Her attorney presented the case with impressive confidence, insisting the family business and our home should be transferred through the estate. He spoke about family heritage and bloodlines while Vivian watched proudly from her chair. When Warren finally stood, his opening remarks were surprisingly brief. He explained that we had no objection to distributing property that legally belonged to the estate, leaving everyone confused about why we seemed so calm. As documents were passed across the table, I signed each one without hesitation. The spectators whispered among themselves, convinced I had surrendered. Vivian smiled wider with every signature, believing she had forced me to give up everything Grant and I had built together. I remembered something my husband often said during difficult moments. Let people underestimate you because confidence without facts usually defeats itself. Just before the judge announced her decision, she paused and asked Vivian attorney a simple question. Had he confirmed that every piece of property listed actually belonged to the probate estate? He answered yes without hesitation. The judge quietly opened another folder, studied several certified records, and calmly revealed that both the company and our home had been transferred into the Carter Legacy Trust 7 years earlier. The entire courtroom fell silent. Vivian attorney frantically searched through his files, but he could not find anything to challenge the official records. Warren handed certified copies to the court, proving they had been properly filed years before. The judge explained that property owned by the trust could not be distributed through probate because it no longer legally belonged to the estate. Everything Vivian had spent weeks fighting over had never been available in the first place. Vivian's face completely changed. The confidence disappeared, replaced by shock and confusion. She demanded answers from her attorney, but he had none. Warren then revealed another surprise hidden inside the trust. Grant had appointed 3 trustees instead of one. I was the first. Our production manager, Douglas, was the second. The third was a local veterans charity that Grant had quietly supported for years. The trust also contained strict conditions that protected everyone Grant cared about. The company could never be sold without unanimous approval from all 3 trustees. It had to remain in Northern Virginia, continue hiring military veterans, and protect the overwhelming majority of its employees during any ownership change. Hearing those conditions brought tears to my eyes because they sounded exactly like the man I had loved for more than 2 decades. The judge explained that Vivian had not been forgotten. Grant had left her a generous payment along with a private letter explaining his decision. After reading it silently, the judge simply said it was one of the most thoughtful estate plans she had ever reviewed. She officially dismissed every claim against the house and the company. One strike of her gavel ended weeks of fear, gossip, and uncertainty. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded both of us. Vivian had nothing to say, while I answered only one question. When asked whether I considered the ruling a victory, I looked toward our employees standing together across the parking lot. I replied that if Grant could see everyone still employed and standing together, he would probably consider that the only victory that truly mattered. The following week, I returned to the company, and the atmosphere had completely changed. People smiled again, machines were running at full speed, and conversations were filled with plans instead of fear. Douglas handed me a forgotten envelope they had discovered in Grant office. Inside was one final handwritten note addressed to whoever would lead the company after him. The message contained only one sentence, yet it perfectly captured the man I married. It said that if we always took care of people first, the business would take care of itself. Reading those words made me realize Grant's greatest achievement was never the money he earned or the buildings he owned. His true legacy was the lives he protected through simple kindness, careful planning, and honest leadership. Several months later, I received a short letter from Vivian. She admitted she had become so focused on claiming what Grant left behind that she forgot the kind of man her own son had been. She apologized without asking for forgiveness or offering excuses. I placed her letter inside the same blue binder that had saved our future. Some wounds never disappear completely, but carrying bitterness forever only creates new ones. On Memorial Day, I visited Grant's grave at Arlington with fresh white roses. Standing there in the peaceful silence, I finally understood what he had been trying to protect all along. The house was never just a house. The company was never just a business. They represented families, friendships, and opportunities that could continue long after we were gone. Walking back to my car, I realized I no longer wanted revenge because justice had already done its work. Peace had become the greatest gift my husband could have left me. If this story reminded you that integrity will always outlast greed and that true wealth is measured by the lives we touch, please leave a comment and share your thoughts below. Do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story. Until next time, thank you for watching.